This month's topic is trauma and grief. So I'll start us off on my end. So I have a master's in clinical behavioral psychology and I specialize in relationships. So I'm the relationship person on this panel. So feel free to reach out with anything relating to that. If I want to start off with grief, there's a lot of stereotypes that there's 5 stages of grief in psychology, and they've done more and more research into this, and grief is very unique to the individual. There's no 5 stages. So, if you're trying to go by the 5 stages, you might experience something else first, not experience something, spend a long period of time, experience something new that's not even in the stages. So it's important to keep in mind that we're all unique in that way. And it's important for us to just understand what we need and what we're experiencing ourselves. So there's no specific stages, order, or time how long something can take when we're dealing with grief. Grief can even be, what we immediately think of someone passing away, but it can even be something like grieving a relationship that ended. And grief can relate to our pets that pass away. It can relate to a lot of things. Anything that ends can be related to grief, and we may have different reactions to it than someone else would. So it's important to keep in mind that if you feel grief about something, that's valid. You're allowed to feel that. It's really important to have someone you can comfortably talk to about, maybe memories, or if there was bad experiences or anything. It's good to be able to have someone to talk to, a loved one, a friend, a counselor, a psychologist, anyone you feel safe with that will not make you feel bad. If we're talking about any of these things that you're grieving over, bottling this stuff can be harmful to your own body, because we can suppress it, and humans are pretty good at suppressing things, but it eventually comes out, and it can come out in little ways, and usually they come out passive aggressively, and we may not realize how heavy it is carrying it, but the more we talk about it and get it out, the lighter we feel it. If it's the death of a really important person in your life, like, it's not going to go away but just by talking about it, but it will feel lighter, and you will feel just better about the situation that you're in. And it's important if you can find people that have gone through a similar loss, because someone who has more similarly walked in your shoes can understand what you're going through, but not exactly. And it's not okay for someone to be like, I went through the same thing and I just got over it, or something like that. That's not a good response. But someone who really can sit with you through it and get it. Being around people that get it is really important. You want to create your village of people that get it. And even someone who hasn't gone through it, they can still be a good support system for you. If you know someone who's going through it and something relating to grief, it's okay to say, there's no right words that I know what to say in this situation, but I care and I want to listen and be there for you. And I would love to know what you appreciate from me right now. I would encourage everyone to ask, even if you're the one grieving yourself, when you are interacting with other people, what do you need from them? And it's really, really important you think about that, and maybe even write it down, because everybody is different again. And someone may think that they're being there for you and they're doing a terrible job at it, but they think they're doing an amazing job. And it's really important for them to know what is really appreciated. So, one example could be, hey, I just need to talk it out, and I really need no interruptions in the next 30 minutes or 10 minutes or however long you need. And if it's someone that interrupts a lot, it's okay to put a timer on, just so it's visually there for them, that, no interrupting, just listening. And then maybe at the end, if you want a hug, saying, I need this much time uninterrupted, and then I need a hug, and I need to be told everything's going to be okay. And that may not work for the next person. They want something else. Or if someone really hurt them, for myself, this is a funny thing that's kind of embarrassing to reveal to people, but if someone has slighted me or done wrong to me, I really appreciate someone smack talking the other person. And unless I say that, no one's going to know that. And smack talking, for example, by my husband is really hard. And if I do that for him, he doesn't feel loved or appreciated or heard, because it doesn't have the same effect on him. So don't be embarrassed with whatever it is you need in a moment to feel heard, or feel like someone is there for you. Just figure out what that is and tell the other person. And if you're the other person, please ask what the other person needs in that moment. And a final thing with the grief is, it's really important to reevaluate kind of where your values are in your life. What do you value? What do you want to get out of life? How do you prioritize different things? and then kind of order them in priority and then figure out what actions kind of make you feel like you're living a valued life. It might not be the same way anymore with this thing that's happened, but there's still ways where your life can live, it can be more aligned to your values, and that living a life that's more aligned to your values um, helps in a lot of different ways to just progress and move forward. With trauma, from a psychological standpoint, they've done so much research into this, and they found one of the most effective things with evidence based treatment that they have right now is prolonged exposure therapy and desensitizing to saying the traumatic thing that happened in a lot of detail. For example, I had a very abusive father and family, and we went through 10 years of divorce court proceedings from when I was 12 to 22. And, I've said this to so many people now, and I'm quite desensitized to saying it. Obviously, if you ask me to say the most traumatic memory I've had, I still have, stronger emotions attached to it. But the more we repeat traumatic things to safe people, again, a loved one, a friend, a counselor, psychologist, someone that, knows how to be kind to us in that very vulnerable moment, it really helps us come to terms with it and not give the traumatic thing as much power as it has over us if we never talk about it and keep trying to shove it down. Um, so it is hard to go through. It's probably the hardest thing to go through the traumatic memory in detail. But that's something that, just from all the evidence they've collected with studies, has been the most helpful thing they've found. And then again, surrounding yourself with good, loving people, creating that village that can make sure that they don't hurt you in that same way again. And I really had to break a lot of, realize what was healthy and unhealthy growing up with a dad that was teaching me the wrong things with what is healthy. So, and I was able to break out of that and find an amazing husband who treats me really well. And my brothers, have not taken the bad traits of my dad, and they've broken those cycles. And so it is possible and it is doable. And you can create, a really beautiful thing by just paying attention to becoming educated and learning more about what is healthy and what's not healthy. And the unhealthy one may seem natural because that's what we grew up with, but it may not be the healthy option. And so, where our boundaries are, not letting someone, um, you know, hurt us. If it's physically hurt us, knowing what the signs are before someone physically hurts you and making it very clear that that behavior is unacceptable and the consequences of things like that. And yeah, so I'll leave it at that. I'm sorry, I talked more than I intended to. But I'll give the floor over to the Wild Guardians and Invisible Enemies. They both focus on veterans, and I have so much respect for that. And Chris himself, the co-founder of the Wild Guardians, has served in the U.S. military. And yeah, thank you so much for everything you've done. And I'll give the floor to either of you and go from there.
So as a gentleman, ladies first. Mel, I know you're trying to get your voice back, so I'll have you go first if you're ready. If not, I can take over.
Yeah, sure, I can go next. So hi everyone, my name's Melly, founder of Invisible Enemies, and yes, as Kimmy mentioned, when I came into Web3 and Invisible Enemies was born, we really wanted to focus on mental health. We recognize that our mentality is just as important, if not, some would argue, more important than taking care of your physical health. Your thoughts are everything, and you cannot avoid your thoughts. You cannot escape your thoughts. You will forever be thinking and having these thoughts internally. And as Kimmy mentioned, when things happen to you throughout your life, bottling those emotions, trying to avoid those thoughts, those feelings is not a healthy thing. That can build up a lot internally, that can build up resentment. They can bottle up and one day just come pouring out and exploding out. So we at Invisible Enemies, we really want to shine a light on these negative thoughts, the internal battle, your inner demons. Depending on what life experiences you've had, things like trauma or heavy grief can really affect your mental state. I personally have experienced both. I've had a lot of trauma in my life. I had a great childhood. Through high school, I went through some things. I did experience sexual trauma. And then when I started this relationship that I was in for the last, I was with the same person since I was 17. And things got really heavy towards the end, and I experienced a lot of toxicity. I had a lot of trauma with that relationship. Um, Some of that trauma was very emotional. I went through a lot of emotional abuse. And again, when your mentality is so important, those things can really change who you are and how you feel about yourself. Trauma can really change a person. It can completely turn your life upside down. And then grief does come along with that. I've experienced a really traumatic, sudden death as well. And things like that can cause a lot of grief. And some people don't know how to grieve. That's another topic that we could speak about as well. Ways to cope with grief, because everyone grieves differently. What do you say to someone who's lost the most important thing in your life? You know, how do you resonate with that person? How do you make them feel better? Sometimes the truth is you can't. All you can do is let them know you're there, you're listening, you're there for support when they need you. Um, I was one of those people who definitely kept it all bottled inside. For me, it wasn't until Web3 where I finally felt like I was at a place I could talk about some of my experience, what I've been through, and share these feelings that I had bottled up for decades of my life. So I really see a lot of opportunity with these amazing communities we're building. I have so much respect for projects like Love Story Unicorns and Wild Guardians, where they can share their experiences, they can open up about mental health and shine a light on how important it is to take care of our mental health. So I see a lot of really great opportunities with Web3 spaces like this one, where we can just be human beings, be there to support one another, let each other know that it's okay to not be okay. Every single one of us has had different life journeys, different experiences. And just because you haven't experienced the same thing I have, and I haven't experienced the same thing as you have, doesn't mean we can't be there for one another, support each other, heal together, and grow together from these experiences. Remember that these kinds of events, traumatic events, big losses in your life, even as Kimmy said, I'm grieving a long marriage. That's another form of grief. There's a lot of different things that we experience, but it's a lot easier to experience these things when we have friends, family, community. So from my personal experience, if you are going through something, find that one person you feel comfortable sharing with. Find that community that you feel drawn to, and speak to people, talk on these things. You being here is the first step. Being able to recognize what trauma looks like, what grief looks like, which I will be sharing some infographics in the comments section. And again, we are going to be doing these monthly. So if you have a community you're in with a mental health channel in the Discord, please ping us. We would be more than happy to share this information and content with other communities. I personally will go to everyone's Discords and drop infographics, drop educational content into those channels for you if you would like some content for your mental health channels. I won't take up too much more time. I do want to have Chris introduce himself, and I'm very excited to hear from our guest speaker as well. So I'll go ahead and pass the mic. But yeah, you guys, my DMs are honestly always open if you're going through it. If you feel comfortable speaking to me, like I'll hop on a phone call with you. Like, don't ever bottle up what you're feeling inside. Find that mental health space where you can come up and share. Find those people that are your community, your family in Web3. If you don't have anyone IRL, go to therapy, go to counseling, use crisis hotlines. We have all these sources available if you need that information. But just remember, you really are truly not alone. There are a lot of us out here who really do care, and really want you guys to feel better, be happy. If we can make you smile, cheer up slightly, we've done our job. We're out. That's what we're out here trying to do. Make the world better one day at a time. So definitely reach out if you need to do so. And it's a pleasure hosting this space, which I feel is very important. I'm very excited to be hosting these monthly with you guys. And yeah, thank you guys and the listeners for coming out to support. It means the world to us, and you guys are taking that first step. So thank you.
I don't know if I can top that, but I'll make it quick. Yeah, so this obviously this topic is very near and dear to my heart. I have experienced both of these, and just kind of the things being to a two-time combat veteran, and being away and seeing things, and then coming back home and dealing with things and things like that. So really won't go into too much, but yeah, just to kind of piggyback off what Kimmy and Mel mentioned. it is very important, right? Hence why we have this. And I'm really looking forward to Maggie speaking. And again, I mean, again, just for the sake of time, I won't take up too much time. But yeah, we will be having these every month. We will change the topic. So just to let you all know, next week we'll be doing for veterans. So I'll be speaking there as well. And again, I definitely want to give the floor to Maggie because I know she is trying to get somewhere. But I do want to let you know that all of those of you that are attending here, if you don't want to, don't know about resources or where to go, I'm actually giving out an NFT that deals with mental health, and we'll explain how you can get that as well. But yeah, there's an information in there. So if you're ever feeling down, and you can always look at your NFT and be like, hey, this was pretty cool. There's that number in there. Let me go ahead and pick up the phone and call. But you can always reach out to us. Again, we always have our DMs open and our Discord open and everything else. So again, yeah, I'm really happy that everybody's here and that we put this together. We took a lot of time. We have met one another. I was actually with Kimmy in Las Vegas last weekend. So again, I've met her several times with Mel. I mean, we're consistently grinding nonstop, but we are very, very, very bullish on this. And that's why we as founders came together to put this together. So again, if you know anybody that could use it, again, we have it recorded. We try to keep it, on topic and everything where we don't derail too much. But again, if you definitely know someone that could definitely use these resources, please reach out to them. And if we can help provide resources to them just as well, we've done our job. I know, Maggie, I know you're trying to get on the road. And again, thank you for being here. Thank you for sending, your signed book, again, what you do. And again, I really want to, not shill you too much here, but I definitely want you to introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you all for having me on. I'm super excited to be here and just chat a little bit. So my X name, I guess, or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, is OX Margot. In IRL, my name is Maggie. My background is I am an oncology nurse for about the last 23 years. And I am a painter and a digital artist and an author. I also do a lot of work with bereaved parents and grieving mothers. And it was awesome to be able to connect with Chris and to kind of bring to the forefront the mental health disparities that kind of are so taboo in our IRL life. And I think you guys really hit the nail on the head when you're talking about the ability to reach a wider audience on Web3 and the ability to really connect with people and let them feel so much less siloed, I think, in their lives, and to really bring that cohesive support in a way where you can impact just, the larger population. So I'm really grateful for you allowing me to be here. And I'm not sure, I'll kind of let you ask the questions and guide me through. Otherwise, I tend to get a little overzealous and I don't stop talking. So.
Oh no, you're doing good. You're doing good. Yeah, yeah. No, you're fine. You're fine. We're actually just here ready to listen. So,
Okay.
yeah, the stage is yours. If you wanna, again, it's very informal. We actually have a timeline and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, we definitely want to showcase what you do in this sector, right? Which you just hit the nail on the head. But definitely, what can help those that are listening, right? So we do have those two topics. Again, for those of you that haven't really looked, and I'll put up there in the nest if you want to find out more information about Maggie and her website and her book and stuff like that. I'm going to post it up, but we will be giving out that signed book out to somebody in the audience today. Yeah, go ahead, Maggie. It's all yours.
All right, thank you. And so I think this topic is very fitting with trauma and grief. I'll give just a little bit about my background with trauma and grief. Trauma is kind of, I think that we would be naive to say that all of us aren't going to go through that at some points in our life, because we will. And I was thinking a lot before this space about how sometimes we can feel just like I said, really isolated, and like we're the only person going through it. And it's like when you buy a car, right? You buy this new model of a car and you're like, oh, I'm going to be the first person to have this car. Nobody has this car. And then when something happens, you realize that, or you're out driving it, you realize that a lot of people are going through the same thing and they all have the same car. I know that's a weird analogy, but so kind of I'll touch base on my trauma. I had let's see here. It was in 2017. My daughter and her father drowned in Lake Superior. With my eldest daughter was there, and she had to wait for me to drive 4 hours to pick her up with the police. And that's to say, we've been struggling with a lot of PTSD with her, and just getting her to, I think, getting her through her high school. She's now in her freshman year of college and she's doing pretty well. I'm super proud of her, but it was, a lot of therapy and a lot of conversation and supporting each other and just really having kind of a different relationship other than a mother and daughter relationship. And so I loved what you were saying earlier about grief and loss and how it doesn't circulate just around somebody dying, right? And when we think about like trauma happening, like when my daughter drowned, and it was probably a month later, my husband at the time left us as well. So, what does that look like? Not having a support system and trying to like navigate that and go through that by yourself. And then on top of it, you lose your friends, right? You lose your sense of who you are. Like I was always, I'm going to be a mother. I'm going to raise both of my kids. All of this is, you have this perfect view of what you think your life should look like. And the grief piece comes not just at the loss of the physical loss of the person, right? You're still losing like all of the things that you did with that person, like going to soccer games and watching her play soccer, talking to the other parents. Like you lose those relationships. And, I always found like the weirdest question people would ask you is just, how many kids do you have? And in your mind, it's really strange because what you have to think about is, how do I want to make this person feel? And it sounds sordid that that's my thought process. But when someone asks you that, a lot of times if you say, well, I have 2 children, but one died, that other person will feel so horrible for you. Which, obviously, does that really need to be your concern? Probably not, but I hate hurting people. And that's, I think, because I'm a nurse and you don't want to see people in pain. And I think that, as you guys were talking about really opening up and telling your story and talking about that, how that can be so therapeutic and so, healing and cathartic, right? But it's really difficult when your entire world is absolutely rocked and you just feel like no one can relate with you. They won't understand what you're going through. And you're just making them feel terrible when you talk about it. Or I remember when I went back to work and someone came up to me and just looked at me and started crying. Like they didn't say hi, they didn't say anything, because they feel so bad for you and they want to help you in the worst way. And so a lot of times they say things that are, like, oh, I remember when my dog died, like trying to relate to you. And in your mind, you're like, your dog dying and comparing that with my child drowning at the age of 10 isn't really even the same ballpark. But on the other hand, I think it's so important to show people grace because they're trying as hard as they can to help you. And I love that you guys were talking about this at the beginning, that, there are, just being there to support someone, you may not even need to talk. Maybe that's what you tell them. Please just sit there while I'm talking. Like you use that example. But I think moreover, people who have gone through that can tend to really isolate themselves and make it almost worse sometimes because they are in so much pain and they don't know what they need. So, we did a lot of therapy I didn't do any of the group therapy just because my personality wasn't there, or I wasn't ready to do that kind of therapy, and I knew that because I was so stuck in my feelings and where I was, that I couldn't identify with anyone else, or I wouldn't let anybody see how much pain I was in. And I don't know if that was a pride thing for me, or just what. But so I started to write a book. I always journaled as a child. I had a very abusive and physically and sexually abusive childhood, and so growing up, I always journaled, and it helped, right? The same thing, just regurgitating the story again and again until you're able to take those steps and move past, each little obstacle that, or every trigger. I mean, obviously those triggers are never going to go away. If I walk past elementary school and the kids are outside playing, chances are I'm going to see a kid that I think looks like my Lillian that passed away. And, sometimes I'll start crying, or sometimes I'll just remember something about her. But so in an effort for me to really analyze where I was and where I wanted to be, and what my new goals were, because in essence, I was completely a different person after that happened. So really looking at, like, how do I find joy again? How do I, be able to communicate with people again? How do I look at Facebook, or look at Twitter, or look at Instagram and see all of my kids' friends' moms posting pictures of the kids she was supposed to be going to high school with, that, they're driving now. Would she have been driving? It's all the what ifs and all those preconceptions, right? And all of the notion, and that path that you had kind of put before yourself is gone. So that's huge. You're grieving what you thought was going to be, but never was, right? It's, not living, it's living the past. It's not living where you are. And so I started to write a book about coping, and no, none of us are really set up to be able to deal with trauma like that. Any kind of trauma, really. You're not, those aren't innate tools that you're given as a child, or to even like go through that process. And so you don't, as you were saying, I mean, everybody handles it differently. We all, take different steps to make it be as okay as it can be. But I think that the piece that people don't really give themselves is the ability to know that it may never be okay. And like you were bringing up, I think, Diana Kubler-Ross, with her stages of grieving previously, that, it's cyclical, right? It's not linear in nature. And it doesn't just stop or end, it just continues. But we can really change our perspective on how we want our life to be, based upon that inward looking, like you were saying. I mean, finding out what goals, what brings you joy, who are you, and where do you want to be. And so in writing the book, I really wanted to give parents, and really anyone that was grieving and going through that, just an okay or a pass, to know that, like, sometimes you're going to think completely irrational thoughts, and you know what? It's fine. It's okay. And that doesn't make you wrong or make you bad. And there's a lot of people who go through that same stuff and feel the same way, but they don't talk about it. So I have chapter in there about, stupid things that people are going to say to you. But I made sure when I wrote the book to put the perspective of it in, that it's because they don't know what to say to you, and really letting them know what you need. If you're at that place in your life where you know what's going to be okay. For me, I don't like to be touched at all. Like, if I'm crying, I'm usually in my car bawling my face off, and then I can come inside. But, it took me a long time to be able to open up to my partner and have him, allow him to be there for me, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So it took me about 4 years to write the book. And in that time, I did start doing mentoring and just kind of I'm a grief companion for bereaved parents. And my daughter and I have it's an endowment. So we send a fourth grader to camp every year. So we're able to really give, and that's at like a St. Croix camp, like a horseback riding camp or wilderness type camp. And so we're really able to support things that my daughter who passed away really loved. And in doing so, it kind of kept her memory alive for us, but also the people who knew her. So, but writing the book was very therapeutic for me, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It took 4 years, 17 different drafts, and a lot of tears. And sorry, I'm probably going to get a little choked up. I'm not sorry about that. I just probably will. Just because it's reliving getting a call when you're at work, driving 4 hours, being told that your daughter's dead on the way and that her dad is dead, and begging the police officer not to tell your other daughter because you needed to be there with her when she found out. You know, it's reliving that. It's reliving getting to the hospital and seeing your daughter dead on a gurney with a endotracheal tube, an IV. And I apologize if I'm being very blatant with it, but I think it's important, as you said, to really be able to talk about the story, and not all the pieces of the story are going to be good, right? And just reliving that again and again, and in order to put that on paper. But I really found that in doing that, it was therapeutic for me, but it also, I'm hoping, is going to support people. I have a couple chapters in there about, how do you support somebody who's going through trauma and grief, and, what's the right things to say, or what sort of things can help. And I think too, just, examining empathy and what that means and how that can be utilized. I mean, I think, I'm going to forget her name, but she does a really good, Brene Brown. So she does a really great 5-minute thing you can find on YouTube just about empathy. And I think that is huge. And it really, talks a lot about how we can be there for each other and the right things to say to get people to talk to you, right? To trust you. So in doing so, was able to finally finish the book, get that published, and then really just been, donating a lot of my art to raise money. I work with a charity here also called Halos, and what they do is they meet parents after their children have died. They help plan the funerals, make sure they have everything that they need to have the funeral, and then the aftercare piece. So I do, lectures and seminars, and I work with families, and then as part of my job, also I work with a lot of people who are, dying from cancer, and do a lot of work with their families as well. So, going through the trauma and the grief, I don't think that the grief is ever going to be done. There's always going to be those triggers, but moreover, I won't say that like it's fabulous that happened, but I will say that as time has gone on, this summer will be 6 years since she passed, and her dad passed, who was my best friend since we were together from 14 and 15 years old. I will say I have a completely different view now, and I'm so grateful for all the little things. So it's funny, sometimes you'll see me post like a tree or like a leaf. And I think it's important to find joy in the small things, because a lot of times, they're fleeting, or you didn't take time to look at it before. But this is all a part of my journey for me to turn something negative into something as positive as possible, and to help as many people and support as many people as possible. Really, just because it's an awful, icky time, and just knowing that someone's in your corner, it may be a complete stranger, and that was the another, a hard thing for me to kind of navigate through, was allowing people to help me, and realizing that people are really innately good and they want to support you. Like Chris has been amazing. He has been supporting my causes and just really been there. And I really appreciate that. So that's kind of a long-winded way to say that I'm glad that I went through this experience, because the person that I am now is so much more loving and kind and equipped to be able to support others. And so you having a monthly space that allows people the opportunity to just even hear someone else's story it's great. And I just want to say thank you for having me.
We appreciate that. And yeah, like I said, anything that we can do to help. I'm not sure if you talked about like the art pieces that you were doing to help raise funds. I think that is a awesome way to not only show your work and raise money and awareness for other people that are having the same problem, but really just to own one of your physical pieces as well, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, besides the artwork and the physical piece, what you're doing, for yourself, coming out here is, speaking. I know there's a lot of us that, tend to hold everything in. Speaking from experience, it took me, a long time to kind of open up and, kind of share my experiences and stuff like that from, my deployments and stuff. But at the end of the day, we have to tell one another that, we're not in this alone. And most definitely, not holding everything in and then exploding